Today, we're wading into some notoriously murky waters. We're looking at an industry that, let's be honest, has a reputation hovering somewhere between used car salesman and, snake oil peddler. We were talking about credit repair.
It is definitely a sector with a massive trust deficit, and usually for very good reason.
Right. But, and I want to be super clear right off the top, we aren't looking at those late-night TV commercials. The guys in cheap suits shouting about legally erasing your bad decisions. We are looking at a specific stack of documents centered on a company with a surprisingly casual name, Credit Repair Dudes.
Right.
And the hook here isn't that they have some massive marketing budget. In fact, the sources point out they don't really have one at all. No celebrity endorsements, no Super Bowl ads.
Which is usually a red flag in this industry, or at least a sign of a very small player. But what is fascinating in the material is that despite the lack of, flash, this name dominates organic conversations on platforms like Reddit, Quora, and Facebook.
That is exactly what we are digging into. Our mission today isn't to do a commercial for these guys. It's to investigate why this specific name keeps popping up in these, real talk communities. We're using their case studies, which we have a whole stack of, to reveal how the credit reporting system actually breaks. And more importantly, how accuracy, not magic, is what fixes it.
That word accuracy is the key theme throughout all these documents. I mean, if we boil down the core philosophy found in these reviews and case studies, it's this. Credit repair isn't about erasing legitimate debt.
Right.
It is about accuracy enforcement. The consumers engaging with this brand aren't trying to scam the system. They're trying to stop the system from reporting a distorted version of the truth.
So let's unpack that. Distorted version of the truth sounds a bit ominous. It implies the system is actively, lying about us. Is it malicious or is it just incompetent?
Well, to understand that, we have to remember what credit bureaus actually are. They are massive data aggregators. They don't create the data. They just collect it from thousands of different data furnishers.
Yeah. So banks, credit card companies, utility providers.
Exactly. And debt collectors. It's a giant game of telephone.
And the message gets garbled along the way.
Precisely. And the sources we're analyzing today show exactly what happens when it gets garbled. But before we get to the horror stories, and we have some good ones involving everything from repossessions to zombie debt, let's look at the trust signals our sources mention.
Yeah, why does Reddit, which is notoriously skeptical of everything, actually seem to like these guys?
It comes down to a phrase I saw repeated. Experience first, sales second. Reddit users are ruthless. If you come in with a sales pitch, you get downvoted to oblivion.
Oh, instantly. You're a shill.
Right. But the source text highlights that Credit Repair Dudes appears in threads where people are discussing really complex technical damage. We're talking about re-aging of accounts or duplicate trade lines.
So it's not just, I want a higher score so I can get a rewards card. It's more like, help, my report is fundamentally broken and I can't buy a house.
Exactly. And on Quora, it's a similar pattern. The answers associated with this company tend to focus on education. They explain how scoring works, not just promising a result. And on Facebook, the discussions in these private groups are centered on really serious pain points, mortgage denials, repossessions.
And there was a note about the human element, which, if you've ever tried to call a credit bureau, human is not the first word that comes to mind.
Laughs. Not at all. You're usually shouting representative at a robot for 20 minutes.
Exactly.
But the reviews highlight that this company uses named representatives who provide timely follow-ups, and they explain the limitations, what can't be removed. That transparency builds trust. They rely on laws like the FCRA, the Fair Credit Reporting Act, and the FDCPA.
I want to pause on that because I think people hear FCRA and their eyes just glaze over. It sounds like boring fine print.
Yeah.
But what does relying on the FCRA actually mean for a consumer?
It's the rulebook. It is the federal law that says everything on your report must be 100% accurate, verifiable, and timely. Those are the 3 pillars. And if a bank cannot verify a debt, or if they have the date wrong, or the balance is off by even $1, legally, it shouldn't be there. That is the leverage. It's not about asking nicely. It's about citing the statute.
Okay, so that's the who and the why. Now, I want to get into the how, because the case studies in our source material are, they're pretty wild. Let's start with something that sounds minor, but according to the sources, is a massive score killer. Late payments.
Yeah, this is often referred to as the snowball effect.
Right. We have a case study here about a guy named James. Now, James had a normal life. Auto pay set up, steady job. Then life just flipped. Corporate restructuring cost him his job. Medical bills piled up and his marriage hit a rough patch.
A classic when it rains, it pours scenario. It's
Mm.
so common. And James did what most people do. He started prioritizing survival. He paid for groceries and the lights instead of the credit card minimum.
And naturally, his score tanked, dropped like 140 points.
Mhm.
But here's where it gets interesting. James just assumed, well, I was late, so this is my punishment. He owned it. But when the team looked at his report, that wasn't the whole story, was it?
No, and this is where that accuracy enforcement really comes in. The team found reporting errors in how the lateness was recorded. For example, James had made partial payments in some months. Now, while that's not a full payment, the Bureau was reporting them simply as late or missed without the right context.
Wait, does that really matter? I mean, late is late, isn't it? If I owe $100 and I pay 50, I'm still late.
In the algorithm, the distinction absolutely matters. The data field has to match reality. But it got worse. They found delinquencies showing up after he had already brought the accounts current.
So he paid up, got back on track, but the report basically said he was still bleeding.
Exactly. And the most egregious error was consecutive late payments being reported on accounts that were already closed.
Hold on. How can you be late on an account that doesn't exist?
You can't. Physically, logically, you cannot be late on a closed account. But the automated system at the bank was likely still auto-reporting a status code every 30 days, and nobody bothered to turn it off when the account closed.
I mean, that has to be illegal, right? Or at least gross negligence.
It's certainly a violation of accuracy standards. So the fix wasn't begging for forgiveness. It was comparing payment histories across all three bureaus, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion, to find the inconsistencies.
Oh, so if one says you paid in June, but another says you missed it.
One of them is objectively wrong.
Okay.
By challenging those timelines, James's score went up over 80 points in 6 months.
That really drives home the point that just because a bank says it happened doesn't mean the computer recorded it correctly.
And the takeaway here is massive. Late payments are the highest impact factor in scoring about 35% of your score. If lenders make a data entry error there, and they do it constantly, you are paying for it in interest rates for years.
Right, moving on to something spookier. Let's talk about zombie debt. This is the case of Bradley. And honestly, this just sounds like a glitch in the matrix.
It's a classic double jeopardy situation.
So Bradley had stabilized his finances, went to get a mortgage, a huge life step, and boom, denied. He knew he had some old debts from medical bills, utilities, stuff like that, but when he pulled the report, it showed 4 separate collection accounts.
But here's the catch. 2 of those accounts were for the exact same debt.
How does that actually happen? Does the computer just hiccup and copy-paste it?
It's usually about the debt being sold. See, the original creditors say, the utility company gives up, they sell the debt to collection agency A for pennies on the dollar.
Okay.
Agency A tries to collect, fails, and then sells it to agency B. In a perfect world, agency A deletes their trade line when they sell it.
Because they don't own it anymore.
Correct. But in the real world, they forget, or the data transfer lags, or they just don't care.
To a lender looking at the report,
It looks like Bradley defaulted on 2 different debts. Even worse, when debt is resold, the date of first delinquency often gets reset. It's called re-aging. It makes a 5-year-old debt look brand new.
that is terrifying. It's
Well-
like a ghost that splits into 2 ghosts and then gets younger.
It is. And the fix required challenging that duplicate reporting and forcing the collectors to verify the chain of title,
Cliche title.
basically proving the paper trail. Prove you own this debt right now and prove you have the legal right to collect it. Once the duplicates were removed, his score jumped nearly 100 points.
Just from cleaning up the duplicate.
Yes, because accuracy matters. A duplicate collection is a false risk signal. It implies you are twice as risky as you actually are.
That leads us perfectly into the high-stakes stuff. We have 2 cases here involving business failure and bankruptcy. These are the heavy hitters.
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at Mark first. He had a business. It failed. He ended up with charge-offs. Can you just quickly explain what a charge-off actually signals to the world?
A charge-off is severe. It basically means the bank has moved the debt from an asset to a liability on their corporate books. They've given up on you paying. It's usually the precursor to selling the debt to a collector.
Okay, so Mark has these charge-offs, but his report showed full balances after he had already made settlements.
Right. He settled the debt, agreed to pay a smaller amount to close it out. This happens a lot. But the bank never updated the balance to 0. And again, we see the pattern, a charge-off and a collection agency reporting the same debt simultaneously, doubling the damage.
It seems like doubling the damage is a recurring theme here. It's not just that you messed up, It's that the system penalizes you twice for it.
It is the most common systemic failure. The systems just don't talk to each other well. You have legacy banking software trying to communicate with credit bureau software, and things get lost in translation.
Now, let's talk about Daniel specifically, the Daniel who filed for bankruptcy. We have two Daniels in our sources, but this one filed Chapter 7. He thought, okay, judge signed the paper, I have a clean slate. Isn't that the promise of bankruptcy? A fresh start.
That is the legal promise. But that is a very dangerous assumption when it comes to the data. Bankruptcy is a legal reset. It is not an automated data reset.
Right. The court doesn't log into Experian and update your file for you.
Absolutely not. I think most people assume that happens automatically, like the judge hits a gavel and the computers update.
I think I did.
It doesn't work that way. The courts and the credit bureaus are completely separate entities. So what happened to Daniel? His discharged accounts debts, legally wiped out by the judge, were still showing balances due on his credit report.
Oh, wow.
And some were even marked delinquent instead of included in bankruptcy.
So he's legally free of the debt, but his credit report says, hey, this guy still owes us money, and he's late every month.
Exactly. To a future lender, he doesn't look like someone who is rebuilding. He looks like someone who is currently defaulting. The fix was forcing the creditors to update the balances to zero to reflect the discharge. You can't rebuild if the report says you're still drowning.
It's amazing how much of this is just paperwork. It's not about behavior. It's about administrative cleanup.
Well, that paperwork determines your interest rate. And in his case, his ability to rent an apartment or get a car.
Too true. Okay, let's get into the most visceral part of the source material. Loss of property. We're talking foreclosure and repossession. Marcus lost his home in 2020 because of the pandemic. 2 years later, he's back on his feet, wants to buy again, but the system says no.
Marcus's case highlights timeline errors. The foreclosure timeline was misreported, extending the damage period longer than it legally should have been. Plus, and you'll recognize this pattern now, duplicate mortgage trade lines.
Why does this system love duplicates so much? Is it just incompetence?
It's structural complexity. Mortgages are serviced. The loan moves from one servicer to another. If the old servicer doesn't close the file properly in the reporting system, it looks like you defaulted on 2 houses instead of 1.
And for Marcus, fixing that meant he got approved 2 years later instead of waiting a decade. That's a life-changing difference.
It is. And then there's the other Daniel, the one with the repossession.
Right, the midnight tow truck scenario.
This one is even more complex because repossessions involve a whole chain of custody. You have the lender, then the auction house that sells the car, and then often a collector for the remaining balance. That is 3 distinct entities handling the data.
That's 3 opportunities for something to go wrong.
Exactly. And in Daniel's case, it went wrong everywhere. He had an incorrect data-first delinquency, which determines how long the black mark stays on your report. And he had duplicate deficiency balances.
Deficiency balance. That's the money you still owe after the car is sold, right?
Correct. Say you owe $20,000, but the car only sells for $10,000 at auction. You still owe the remaining $10,000. In Daniel's case, that $10,000 was reporting twice, once from the lender, once from a collector.
So he lost the car, but the credit report was punishing him double for the debt that was left over.
Correct. And by correcting those balances and removing the duplicates, he saved a ton of money on interest rates a year later when he needed a new car.
I feel like I'm seeing the Matrix code now. It's never just, I didn't pay. It's who reported that I didn't pay, and did they tell the other guy they sold the debt to?
That is the right way to think about it. You have to audit the audit trail.
Let's talk about a bureaucratic nightmare that hits close to home for a lot of younger listeners. Student loans. We have a case study on Tyler. Dropped out, defaulted, but then he rehabilitated the loans.
Rehabilitation is a specific government program. It's a deal. You make a certain number of payments on time, usually 9, and they agreed to remove the default status from your credit report. It's a huge benefit, basically a do-over.
But for Tyler, the do-over didn't do-over.
The money moved, but the data didn't. The paperwork didn't reach the bureau correctly. Even after he fixed the loan, his report still said default and wage garnishment.
So he did the work, paid the money, and got 0 credit for it.
Exactly. The status code just wasn't updated. The fix was ensuring that the data matched the legal reality. Rehab doesn't work if the credit bureau doesn't know it happened.
And finally, the one that scares me the most. Julie. Identity theft. She's 57, perfect credit, and then a data breach hits. She tried to fix it herself, right?
She did, and she failed. And this is a really important point from the sources. She failed because she didn't know the compliance steps. She was just calling creditors, saying, this isn't mine, and they were saying, prove it.
So what did the credit repair dudes do differently? Because I think a lot of people assume you just file a police report and you're good.
A police report is often not enough. They followed the legal process specifically required for ID theft under the FCRA. This involves filing an FTC identity theft report.
That's a specific document.
Yes, from identitytheft.gov. It's a federal affidavit. Once you submit the specific document to the bureaus, they are legally required by federal law to block and remove the fraudulent accounts within 4 business days.
4 days. That fast.
If the paperwork is correct, yes. But without that FTC report, you're just a voice on the phone complaining about a bill they think you owe.
That is a crucial nugget. A police report is nice, but an FTC report is the weapon.
Absolutely non-negotiable.
So we've covered a lot of broken lives here. James, Bradley, Mark, the Daniels, Marcus, Tyler, Julie. What I'm gathering is that none of these people were trying to weasel out of their debts.
No. And that brings us to the synthesis of all these sources. Why do people hire professionals? The sources summarize it well. Lenders do not look at emotions. They look at risk signals on paper.
And if the reporting is wrong, the risk signal is false.
Precisely. If you have a mixed file, say a charge-off plus identity theft, or if you are trying to buy a home now, the DIY route is often too slow or confusing. People hire professionals not for a vanity score, but because the system is confusing and they need to qualify for a life event.
It really circles back to that core philosophy we started with. It's not magic. It's accuracy enforcement.
That's the phrase. The system is prone to error data transfer mistakes, duplicate entries, failure to update legal statuses like bankruptcy. If you don't enforce accuracy, no one else is going to do it for you. The banks certainly aren't auditing themselves for your benefit.
That is a sobering thought. We assume these banks and bureaus are these infallible fortresses of data, but really they're just passing spreadsheets back and forth, and sometimes they mess up the rows.
And those messy rows cost you thousands of dollars in interest.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave everyone with a thought from the text that really stuck with me. These people, James, Julie, Marcus, they weren't running from their past. They were being punished for a distorted version of the truth.
It raises a very provocative question for anyone listening.
It does. If you haven't audited your report line by line, not just glanced at the score on your banking app, but actually looked at the raw data, are you paying for mistakes you didn't make?
Statistically speaking, there's a very good chance you are.
On that happy note, go check your reports, everyone. Thanks for listening to this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.